today is Madeleine Zeldin, and she's going to provide insight into the importance of advocacy, becoming involved in causes for positive change. She will also present solutions to problems she encountered with the medical system throughout her husband's 7-year battle with cancer. In her book, Our Last Dance, she honors her late husband's desire to have his story told so that others may benefit. Professionally, she has been engaged in nursing and teaching. Throughout her adult life, she has successfully advocated for changes in the medical field, along with pioneering home birth and midwifery in her area. She's volunteered medical and teaching services in many countries, including Africa, Jamaica, Philippines, and Mexico, as well as in Canada. Let's welcome Madeleine Zeldin. Yes.
This away. I was trying to get connected, but I'm not able. I'll just leave it here. Thank you. Give me just a moment. I couldn't find my water earlier. So yes, my name is Madeleine Zeldin. Snowbirders, I guess they've all left. I know all my best friends have, and I'm missing them. So for those of you back in the shade, I'll speak louder. I was just getting ready this morning, and I looked at the clock, and it was 9:22. I had just gotten out of the shower, and there was a banging at my door. It was my neighbor who said, Madeline, it's 10:22. You're supposed to be talking at 10:30. You better get going. So I grabbed my wrap, threw it on, and ran over here. My sarong for my good friend in Ecuador. Don't worry, if it comes apart, I do have clothes on underneath. So anyhow, I got over here and talked to Jim, and he said, oh no, it's only 9:22. My neighbor said that you had changed your clock last night. Jim said, no, we didn't change last night. Someone else came along and said, we're changing soon. Someone else came along and said, we're not changing. I don't know, I was in chaos this morning. Anyhow, let's just hope my sarong doesn't come off. It reminded me of a quote in my book that I'll read it to you. When I went to France many, many years ago, a book given to me as a bon voyage gift by my friend back in Canada. I recall her words. When she saw this book, she felt compelled to get it for me because of the quote. I once again glanced at the cover. On the cover, a quote by Nietzsche. One still must have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. My life has been full of chaos, wonderful and rich, with good friends and family. So today was just another one of those chaotic moments. I did write a book on my late husband's death and problems we encountered with the medical system. Our Last Dance. I'll read the introduction to give you an idea of what my purpose was. My purpose in writing this book is, firstly, to create a portrait of my life with my beloved husband, Gerald, an internationally renowned artist and philanthropist of the human spirit. I highlighted his artistic genius and the joys of our soulmate relationship, along with the intense challenges throughout our journey with cancer. I wanted to share my experiences and some of the problems and some of the solutions that we found in dealing with our medical system, showing that with advocacy and persistence, we can make a difference. I also wanted to bring death with dying at home out of the closet to show that it can be done, if desired, with respect and dignity. I just want to recount a short story. I was in Ecuador for the winter last year and preparing for a talk that I was doing in Los Angeles. And I was living in the Amazonian jungle with the shaman for a couple of months. And we were sitting at the table, and with my limited Spanish and their limited English, we were talking about my book and my presentation in Los Angeles and how I was supposed to keep the presentation down to 25 minutes. And unfortunately, I'm the talker, and I was finding that very difficult, that time element. So the shaman's little son, 8-year-old son, said to me, well, why don't you just talk fast? I thought, well, that's a good idea. It's not foreign to me. I grew up in a family commune, 10 kids. We always had relatives from Europe living with us. My grandmother lived with us. It was basically a commune. And as children, if we didn't talk loud and fast, we didn't get our needs met. So I'm used to that concept. And in the meantime, I received an email from a cousin who said, Madeleine, you have to keep the talk down to 25 minutes, otherwise people's minds are just going to go to sex. And I said, well, is that a problem? So if I see smiles on your faces, I'll know where you are. This presentation, first of all, is not about selling my book. In fact, I have no book to sell. So, however, my book is a tool about the information I would like to give you. The presentation is to give an insight into the importance of advocacy, which I basically have done all my adult life. Our Last Dance is not a book about death. Although it deals with death, it is really a book about a passionate man and his family, his step-family, who were more than his own. It's a book about a man who lived passionately and was loved passionately. In one of the emails that I received after his passing, it said, Gerald left an imprint on my soul. Gerald left an imprint on all of our souls. Our Last Dance is a book, is a tapestry of emotions. It's a weaving in and out of happiness and sorrow, joy and grief, love and happiness, death and grieving. But mostly it tells how, with advocacy and persistence, we can make a difference. Now, I do want to say that the medical system I'm speaking of is the Canadian system, but I know if we could transfer my information to most international places, so you just take what you can from it. I also know that from my nursing background that when a person fits into the box, into the medical system, everything goes well, everything is fine and there's no problems. However, with Gerald, his situation did not fit in the box, so we encountered many problems, and I had to find solutions to them while I was caregiving, which was a very difficult job. Gerald said about his art, one of the major themes of my artwork is movement and motion. It's as if there's a wind blowing things around. It's like life. As much as you may want things to settle and stay the same, they never do. There's always change. Nothing settles or remains the same. Just as in our life, when everything seems blissful and settled, envisioning a romantic retirement together in the near future, and thinking we would be together until we were 95, the winds of change blew our way, when suddenly our dreams were shattered. At the young age of 60, Gerald was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer. He was diagnosed with death. I sobbed when the doctor informed us. Jerry tried to bestow it. But here goes our journey, and I say ours, because although it was Gerald's illness, it became our journey together and our family. On May 20, 2010, an early morning gentle gust of wind blew through the window behind him and left. He then took his last breath. Surely, said our son, Julian, weeping, the angels came to take his spirit away. Gerald passed on to the next part of his journey in peace and at home, as was his wish, on this magnificent spring morning, his favorite season, with the birds chirping and the early morning light shining on him, like today, with his loved ones holding and hugging him. His dream was to travel the world in springtime, starting here in springtime and traveling to places that were spring, then ending up home in springtime. His whole year would be spring. So his dream is being fulfilled. He will be eternally in springtime. We were longtime friends. When Gerald and I married, our relationship became intense, feeling that our souls were intertwined. I was attracted to his honesty and kindness and passion for life from the moment we met some 30 years ago. Jerry would always say that our togetherness was like a dance, teaching each other through the stages of life. And it got better and better. At the time of our marriage, my youngest son, Julian, was a young teenager, and my two older sons, Jason and Jonathan, both just finishing law school, were spreading their wings around the world. However, just as after I gave birth to Julian, Gerald always used to come around town on his motorcycle and his bicycle and stop in for a coffee or whatever. And he stopped in the morning of Julian's birth and realized that I had just given birth and asked where the baby was. And Julian was in a bassinet right on the sofa in the living room. And I said, here, Jerry, hold him. And he said, oh, no, not having children of his own. He had never held a child that fresh. Julian was 10 hours young. And I did put him in his arms and he held him like a piece of fine porcelain. And that was when they bonded and fell in love. They fell in love with each other's souls. It was the beginning of a love affair of their souls. Jerry became more than a stepdad to Julian. He became his buddy, his muse, his motorcycle riding partner, and the love of his life. Since my older boys were often away already, Jerry became something else to them. He shared another bond with them. Jerry was our soul friend. The Celtics call it Anum Cara, a friend of the soul. After giving Jerry his spare time to leave peacefully, we washed him with rose water and dressed him in his favorite clothes, his cords and his black sweatshirt. In some cultures, they say the washing of the body washes away the pain and the cares of this world and represents a fresh entrance into the next life. We sat beside his body for the day and wept. We wept some and told stories about our life with Jerry. We sat beside his body for the day and wept some and told stories.
Are you getting a signal now?
We sat chaos, I told you. Hello. Hello.
There we are.
You're back.
Thank you. In some cultures, they say the washing of the body washes away the pain and cares of this world and represents a fresh entrance into the next life. We sat beside his body for the day and wept some and told stories about our life with Jerry. The fun, the joy, the laughter, full of creativity. In the early evening, the funeral professionals came to take Gerald's body. I was shocked at their arrival, the finality of our whole journey, and mentioned to them that they must have the worst job ever. They assured me that they were fine and were used to this. They came in with a stretcher and a plastic zippered bag. Another surprise. I thought it would be a simple sheet. They asked me if I would like to leave the room while they transferred his body. Another shock. No, I said. I've been with him for this whole time. Why would I leave him now? So Julian filled the house and garden with Jerry's favorite spiritual, Nina Simone's Nearer, Blessed Lord. And we all helped transfer Jerry's body. As I zippered the bag, as Jerry lay silent and still, and Nina Simone holding us steady, as Julian would say, I heard faint sounds of tears. The funeral professionals, who assured us that they were fine with this, were wiping the tears which were gently rolling down their cheeks. They said they had never felt such emotion. Jerry was still teaching the universe, even after his death. We walked the stretcher out to the garden in the light of the peaceful early evening, Gerald's one last day in our beloved garden. The sky was swirls of reds and oranges and burnt siennas, like one of Jerry's paintings. We stood for a moment in silence, with friends and family, standing as a guard of honor for this most honorable of men, Gerald Zeldin. With stretcher and the hearse, they drove down our long, steep driveway. We waved goodbye as we lost sight of them, lost sight of him, our last. At the day of celebration we later held for Gerald, Julian said, Jerry was a metaphor for another way of being. He was everything I came to love. So the presentation is about advocacy, as I said. I have a chapter on advocacy, and excuse me, I am going to read 2 or 3 pages of it to give you some background on my advocacy and my insistence and my persistence, which helped immensely to fulfill Gerald's will, to have his story told and to have changes made in the medical system in order to help others. He knew it was too late to help him. He was dying, but he wanted to make sure others would be helped and would not have to go through the same things that he did. The importance of advocacy. I have come to know the meaning of persistence, assertiveness, firmness, and just plain saying no. It was October 2003, Gerald's 60th and best birthday ever. We were on cloud 9, in love and in magic together, as he would say. However, within 3 weeks, the cloud darkened, and at this very young age, he was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer after a pharmacist's error in 2000, which played havoc with his metabolism. The term aggressive is different from just simple prostate cancer. I shouldn't say simple, cancer is cancer. But with aggressive, the numbers increase exponentially as opposed to just prostate cancer. So instead of his numbers increasing as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they increased as 2, 4, 8, 16, and on and on. So the numbers increased very rapidly, which basically meant death in a few short years. They gave him 2 years. He wanted to know the truth, and even all the alternatives he went to basically gave him 2 years. Gerald was an artist. His art has been collected internationally. He was a professor in the world-renowned animation program at Sheridan College, where he was revered. He was a kind and spiritual man. He listened to the peaceful, true nature of his soul. He lived passionately, passionate about life, his art, his music, his motorcycle rides, his dogs, his walks in the conservation area behind our home in the countryside, old-fashioned conversation about ideas sitting around the kitchen table, and of course, passionate about his family. He loved music, especially old jazz of the 30s and 40s, which he always listened to while painting in his studio. His art depicted that passion. Gerald was a man of his generation. He was taught by his trusting parents to respect and maybe even obey the opinion of the medical system, unequivocally. I, being a woman of the same generation, was taught that same respect. However, after many confrontations with the medical system, I broke out of that mold. I realized I had to question, to research, to refuse, and ultimately to make up my own mind. From my early adult life, I began to advocate for change in the medical field. When I felt that change was needed, I rallied, I lobbied, I started a group or joined a group. In the early 80s, while pregnant with my third child, I advocated for change to the legal status of home birth, after a doctor told me he would personally call the Children's Aid Society and take that child away from me if anything happened at my planned home birth, assisted by my very experienced midwife. Unfortunately, I came to learn that childbirth moved from home birth to hospital birth in the 30s and to the, quote, expertise of machinery instead of, quote, informed intuition. Changes were eventually made in the status of home birth. Needless to say, with that kind of pressure, my planned home birth became a hospital birth. For a reason, I presume. Totally against hospital policy of the early 80s, since a birthing couple was only allowed one relative to accompany them in the birthing room. My midwife instantly became my aunt. When after the birth, the attending nurses were extremely thankful for the expert assistance of my aunt, I confessed the truth to them. They wished that the assistance of midwives would become standard practice, since it was so helpful to them. So I knew I had to advocate for them. Within hours, I discharged myself and my beautiful newborn son, again against hospital policy. I immediately wrote a thank you note to the hospital officials for, quote, allowing my midwife to assist at my son's birth, and quoted the nurses with their permission. Henceforth, this wish was granted. Midwives were soon allowed in the hospital to assist birthing couples. From then on, I advocated for many important issues, including change to the legal status of midwives, change to the policy against vaccination in schools. I started a group called Informed Parents Against Vaccination. I was appointed interviewer on the midwifery application process committee at McMaster University, and midwifery gained legal status in Ontario in 1990 because of this. Regarding the vaccinations, we added another reason for exemption. There were only two reasons, medical and religious, and now another was added for reasons of conscience. So now if a parent is conscientiously against vaccinating their child, they simply have to fill out a form at the Public Health Department. I later volunteered at the North Hamilton Community Health Centre, headed by Dr. Cohen, again advocating for improved health conditions for refugees in the area, with great results. Among other initiatives, a physiotherapy center was opened there for their use, and so on. So now I knew that with much effort and hard work, we can make a difference. Now it was time to advocate for Gerald. His story is a long one which really warrants being told. The following is a condensed version. The next chapter will be dedicated to our medical journey. But just briefly, at this time, suffice to say, he continued to be let down by our medical system. There was one mistake after the other and one omission after the other. Specialists disagreed with one another. The radiologist told us that radiation was the way to go. Hormone specialists told us that radiation would not be good, but hormone drugs would be the treatment of choice. The chemo doctors told us likewise. Whom do we believe? There was no team of doctors with whom we could discuss the story. To fast forward, because I have time limitation here, Gerald's numbers, which should have been 0, increased to 600 within the 2 years. The doctors gave him a drug that said he would give him a little bit of time, that his numbers would go down for a while, and just give him that little bit of extra time. So he was given the drug and we came off to Mexico for a couple of months, as we often did in our van. And we returned to Canada, and instead of the number was 300. Instead of the 300 decreasing, it increased to 600. It had doubled. They told him there was nothing more they could do for him, just to go home and wait to die. And this was approximately the 2-year mark. I knew Gerald's soul was not ready to go, and I knew I had to do something for him. I did a lot of research and eventually took him to a clinic in Los Angeles, where they, within a few short months, brought his numbers, his 600 number, down to 8 in approximately 4 or 5 months. Due to a cocktail of drugs they had given him, which were not available in Canada. The drugs were approved for cancer, but for different kinds of cancer. And the problem in Canada was that the studies had not been done on prostate cancer, although it was proven that these drugs definitely worked. So henceforth, we never did get any financial help from our system. We had to pay the whole thing ourselves, which was a lot. Gerald didn't know I was paying. He thought that his insurance was paying for the program. So, but I refused to let him die because of money. So I borrowed and I begged and I did whatever I had to. And however, our system would not comply. We had to have certain blood tests in order for them to continue with the drugs, because they would fine-tune the drugs every time we went down, every month. And they were not able to fine-tune his drugs if he didn't have the test. But our system said, well, that's just not in our budget, we can't do it. So they did give Gerald a wonderful 4 extra years of life, beautiful years where he was still teaching light drawing at Sheridan College. He was still in his studios, producing much art. He was having exhibits. He was riding his motorcycle. We were driving our van here to Mexico. And our life was wonderful, although there were some ups and downs and some difficulties throughout those few years. But he did have 4 wonderful years. Then, due to a drug error by his local oncologist in November 2009, and then a misdiagnosis by the visiting nurse, he was rushed to the emergency department. He was near death. Because they had given him this wrong drug, and I can't go into the medical details because of time restrictions, but very basically, Gerald has a parathyroid. Your parathyroid is responsible for metabolism of calcium in your body. This drug took all the calcium out of his blood to put his bones. And they were giving him all kinds of calcium, and as long as he was getting his IV calcium mega doses, his calcium levels would stay up. As soon as they discharged him and put him on 40 huge horse pills, the size of my thumb, calcium pills, he had to take 40 a day in order to keep his blood level up. Within 3 or 4 days, his blood results would plummet, and he would be rushed to emergency again, because he could not metabolize the oral calcium because of having no parathyroid. What happened was he was, after the drug was given to him, he was very sick at home, and his doctor was away, so I kept calling and asking what was going on, and they said, well, expect him not to feel great, he's going through all this, so I put up with it in a little way, and finally after 3 or 4 days, I insisted that someone come to see him. So they said he would send a visiting nurse. She was supposed to come in the morning, she didn't arrive. I waited a couple of hours and called the office, and they said, oh, they forgot to put his name on the list, that she would be there shortly. It was early evening by the time she got there. She was supposed to assess him and let us know what was going on. She didn't assess, she diagnosed, which nurses should not do. Gerald woke up in bed and he said he was very, very nervous, but he was all numb, all around his mouth and his face. He was getting all numb. And he felt a little bit out of it, he said. She said, it's no problem, you're just having an anxiety attack. I said, no, Gerald does not have anxiety attacks. I said, I know we're anxious about what's going on, but he's not having an anxiety attack. Please call a doctor. She refused to call a doctor. She gave him a lorazepam and said, go to sleep. So I was extremely distressed, but by this time it was almost getting ready. It was almost getting close to midnight. So I said, Jerry, that's fine. First thing in the morning, I'm going to call an ambulance. I will pay for it, but I'm taking you to the clinic in an ambulance to find out what's going on. So next morning we woke up early. I was just throwing the duvet over the bed. Gerald had sat on the chair in order to put his jeans on because he was feeling so weak. And as I was throwing the duvet over the bed, I noticed Jerry in my peripheral vision. He was sitting there very strange with his eyes more or less popping out of his head. And I thought he was kidding me, and I turned to say, Gerald, what are you doing? And I realized he was not being silly. I ran over and gently put him on the floor to get blood to his head, and he was having a seizure. I quickly dialed 911. The ambulance came. This time I'm not paying for it. They're paying for it. And they would not let me go in the ambulance because they said the flu was going around. I said, no, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. Please let me come with you. They refused. I had to drive my car in this state that I was in. And it was a 10 or 15-minute ride. We finally got to the emergency ward at the hospital. And there was a whole empty lot where all the ambulances were to park. And there was one spot way up in the corner, way up in the hill that said no parking. I parked my car where it said no parking. I had to be with Gerald. The ambulance assistants, as they were pulling up the gurney from the ambulance, Jerry's almost dead body on it, came running over to me, yelling at me because I was parking in a no parking zone, which was totally out of the way of any traffic, of any emergency vehicles. It was totally on its own. I didn't listen to them. The alternative was to go across the road in the great big parking ramp where I would have to go up the spiral, find a spot, get a ticket, walk back. It could take me 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, Jerry could have been dead. I was not going to leave him. So I just went up to him, held his hand on the gurney, and walked into the emergency ward with him. And the ambulance assistants were not happy with me, as they must say most doctors weren't. But so we were in the emergency ward, and they quickly did blood work and found out the problem that his calcium levels were so low. Now, calcium, I'm sure a lot of you know and some don't, calcium, a lot of people think is just for healthy bones and healthy teeth. Well, calcium actually is the trigger for muscle activity in the body, and the heart is a muscle. If we don't have calcium, that heart muscle will stop and you will die. So calcium was extremely important, and because he didn't have a parathyroid, this whole thing was extremely intense and important that he get help fast. In emergency, they gave him his IV calcium, they stabilized him, I'm fast forwarding. He was crying with pain, the nurses would not get him pain medication. I said, get it for him, please. Oh no, we don't have the doctor's orders yet. Well, get the doctor's orders. Oh, well, the doctor's busy. I know they're busy because of people like Gerald. I get the doctor's orders. This went on and on. They weren't busy. They were sitting talking about the restaurants they were at the night before. They wouldn't do it. So Gerald was lying there in pain. Once they got him stabilized with his calcium, IV calcium, they sent him to a ward. They were supposed to send him to Ward B, but there were no beds, so they sent him to Ward C. So the bag was emptied. I go to the desk in Ward C and ask them to get the new bag of calcium. Sorry, we're busy, and the pharmacy is busy. This went on all day. The bag was empty, and he wasn't getting his calcium. I was trying to be polite and calm about the whole thing. Finally, my family left. It was past the visiting hours. They had to go home an hour away. So I was left alone, and I was with him, and I went back asking for the medication, but he was still busy, doing nothing. And after an hour or so, I was just ready to go and really cause hell. And the on-call doctor came running into the room. The intensive care staff came running down the hall, grabbed Gerald's bed, ran it down the hall to intensive care, and the doctor came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Zeldin, I don't think your husband is going to last through the night. This, not because of the cancer, because of the drug. They brought him up to intensive care and put me in a dark, dingy little waiting room by myself. I was frightened and anxious and not knowing whether he was dead or alive. And my family, as I said, all went home an hour away. There was, fortunately, one phone in the room. I called them. I didn't want them to drive in the dark at midnight knowing that there was death at the doorstep, but they had to. So it took them a while to come back. I was in the room by myself for almost an hour when they called me into emergency, still not telling me if he was dead or alive. I walked in and he had slits all over and was bleeding all over. The resident who was trying to find a line could not find it, so just cut him all over. And he just lay there saying, they're butchering me, they're butchering me. It was beyond a nightmare. To fast forward again, after a few days, they finally stabilized him in intensive care and brought him to a ward. Needless to say, in my opinion, many of the nurses in the hospital were dangerously uncooperative until I demanded and threatened to call my lawyer. The doctors on call were mostly unavailable to answer our concerns until I insisted on a family meeting, a term one must know. They tried to blame the cancer until I showed them the research I had on the medication errors. Research is the key. So every time he was admitted 5 times within a month, because every time he was sent home on oral calcium, 40 huge oral calcium pills that he had to take. I couldn't even take one, I couldn't swallow one, it was so huge. His blood work would come up in a few days and he would be readmitted. The nurses, every time we went in, I had to have a fight with them. They would not get the medication up. They didn't understand the importance of the calcium that he needed. I would have to yell and scream and ask them to get the medication. All they would say is they're busy, the pharmacy is busy. I had the same story all the time. And but the third time he was admitted, he needed blood and he needed his IV, and the same story. It's a change of shift. The pharmacy is busy and they're busy. I said, it doesn't matter. I really don't care. I don't want to hear that anymore. I said, you get the medication up here now, or I'm calling my lawyer. Within 10 minutes, everything was up. Now, I couldn't understand how they were so busy before, but as soon as I threatened to call my lawyer, everything was up within 10 minutes. I said to them, I have to talk to the doctor on call. No, he's busy. You can't talk to him. I said, I know he's busy because if you treat everyone else like you're treating my husband, you must be very busy. So eventually the doctor did come in within a half an hour. I knew him because he was the head of oncology. I did know him. He came in and looking very distressed with me because I was bothering him. I said, please, Dr. Urke, sit down. I only need 5 minutes of your time, but you have to hear this story. And I told him what was going on. He apologized and said, how can we fix this? He said, if I chart that the medication has to be up within 1 hour, would that satisfy you? And I said, you know what, I'm not a demanding person. I'm simply trying to care for my husband and keep him alive, and you're making it really difficult on me. He said, well, you know, the nurses are afraid of you. And I said, well, let's correct that statement. Do you want to know who's afraid of who? I said, I'm afraid of the nurses. They're trying to kill my husband. So at that, he settled down. He wrote on the chart. Everything was together within an hour. It took us 3 minutes to settle this whole problem. It's a matter of listening. They won't listen until you insist. It's behavior modification, and it was one thing that I told them at the end, and fast forwarding. I said, one good thing you have here is behavior modification. I said, because when I'm polite and calm, and I ask quietly to have things done, nothing gets done. But as soon as I yell and scream, everything is done. I said, it's a great behavior modification program you have. Anyhow, I asked for a family meeting, and I learned that when I said I want to talk to the doctors, they would simply run along the hall and give me 10 seconds of their time and not even hear what I was saying. So I had to learn that the term family meeting is very important in our system. With a family meeting, they have to give you an hour of their time in a special room and really listen to you. So the family meeting happened. At the family meeting, I said, why is Gerald dying? And they said, well, you know, the cancer is getting worse. I said, I know the cancer is getting worse, but why is he dying? The cancer is getting worse, and it was repeated until I pulled up my research, which I had done. Research is the key. I pulled up my research. Basically what the research said on this drug, and I had it all highlighted, if you had translated it, it would have said, do not give to Gerald Zeldin, it will kill him. And as soon as I brought the research out, they looked at it and they said, you're right, Mr. Zeldin, we gave him the wrong drug. Oh. But if I had not had that research, they would have just said the cancer is getting worse. I would have said, thank you, doctor, for trying to help him. End of story. So it's so important to know the terms. Family meeting. Have your research done. Be persistent. Scream if you have to. If that's the behavior modification program, do it. Follow the program. The patient advocate. We try to get their help in order to have major meetings with the head doctors of the whole hospital. Jerry, one of his last wishes on his deathbed was, said, Madeleine, Please get my story out there so that others can be helped. She said, I know it's too late for me, I'm dying, but I can't have others go through what we're going through. So I had to have a meeting, not simply a family meeting, but a meeting with the whole system. So I called these patient advocates. They were not returning my calls until I called my lawyer. And realized that the patient advocates are hired by the hospital. What employee is going to want to put their employer down? So we were not getting anywhere. Anyhow, I have a few minutes. The patient advocate was employed by the hospital and was not helpful in any way until I called my lawyer. But I refused to be intimidated by the medical system. After insisting on a meeting with the chief of medicine at the Hamilton Health Sciences and the regional vice president of cancer care to tell Gerald's story, they finally listened. They were ashamed and apologetic. Gerald was grateful that they listened. Less than 3 weeks before his passing, unable to write, he dictated a letter to me for the doctors. The following note is with a shaky hand signature. May 1, 2010. Dear doctors, I am grateful for you taking the time to listen to my complicated and botched medical history as related to you recently by my wife, Madeleine. This means a great deal to us. And that we are on a route to some resolution gives me considerable satisfaction in this, the last days of my life. Thank you for your considerate ears. Hopefully, my story will lead to changes in the medical system that will enable others to be helped. With warm regards, Gerald Zeldin. I just very quickly, I know I have a few minutes, I have had since the time we had the main meeting with the doctors, they gave me 1 hour. I said 1 hour is not enough with all the main doctors of the whole system. So I said, fine, I'll take the hour, better than nothing. I got in there after an hour, the secretary came in, she said, doctor, you have 5 more minutes. They said, forget it, cancel our whole afternoon, we have to listen to Mrs. Zeldin's story. I gave them 18 issues that had to be changed. They promised they would do it. Some of the letters I received from them, dear Madam, May 2010, dear Madeleine, I understand that your primary focus at the moment is on caring for your husband. When the time is right for you, I will make myself available to talk to you about how we are addressing the issues that you raised in your meeting with the doctors and myself. I've attached to this an email summary of all the actions we're doing. It goes on and on and on with all the changes. Especially with the laboratory, everything was changed with the laboratory because what happened with the medication, they had sent the lab results to the first ward that he was supposed to go into, and there were very dangerous results, but the nurses didn't have the insight to find out where that patient was. The ward that he had gone to did not have the insight to say where is his lab work, so this very dangerous piece of paper was sitting on a desk somewhere, and no one cared about it, and that's where the whole problem started. The next letter, October 2010, Madam, I'm writing to update all our efforts to improve the knowledge and skills of the healthcare providers involved in palliative care. We've introduced an educational program that goes on and on about all the things we're doing. I hope you feel as I do that we are undertaking an initiative that will make an important difference to future patients at the Zeldin Cancer Center. I am sure you are still grieving the loss of Gerald, but I hope that you will gain some comfort from the fact that the issues he encountered in the final phase of his life are being addressed, and that this initiative, along with his art, will be part of his enduring legacy. And one of the last, but I'm still receiving letters. Dear Madeleine, July 2011. It was good to have the opportunity to meet with you again to update you on the progress being made at Hamilton Health Sciences to improve the communication. It goes on and on. Also the critical test results, improvement in that. I've had several meetings to focus on communication with members of the Zeldin Hospital. A number of additional ideas have surfaced. I remain committed to putting in place mechanisms that will keep the issue of communication near top of mind of healthcare providers. And it goes on and on. Thankfully, the changes concerning our major issues continue in order to help others as is Gerald's wish. It goes on and on. I had one last little paragraph that I would like to read. I promise you it's only a few seconds. My journey without Gerald. Almost 1 year later, the torturous year without him. It is springtime once more. Gerald's favorite. The birds are mating. This always happens when I'm reading with Jerry at church notes. The birds are mating, the buds are bursting with pleasure. The universe is beginning to paint the landscape with brilliant springtime colors, just as Gerald will be beginning to paint another canvas. I am moving forward with my life without him, as I know he would want me to, but with that yearning still in my heart. I am looking out of his studio window, his studio where his paints and brushes still hold a place of honor, where his ashes lay in their golden resting place. All this seems to be changed. I view our budding spring garden, tulips and daffodils and forsythia and cherry blossoms. Robins have made their nest in the cedars in front of the studio window, as they have every year. I watched, as Jerry and I always watched, as little blue eggs were cracking, bit by bit, and 3 wee beaks shone through. The mother robin is feeding her hungry young ones, chewed up worms. The father robin is perched close by, feathers fluffed up, protecting his family. I am in awe as I see new life begin. Thankful for all the support I have had from my friends and family, I know I still have a long journey ahead of me. But as Joe Cocker sang in the 60s, I'll get by with a little help from my friends.
Thank you.
Namaste to you.
Thank you for sharing your very moving story. I'm sure we all have information we can take from this morning that we will be able to use.
Thank you.
We don't have time now for questions, but perhaps Madeleine will be here
I can stay around.
afterwards and can talk with you if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine. So remember to stack your chairs and pick up your coffee cups and turn your cell phones on.